Let me introduce myself. My name is Trish Wilder, LPL Financial with Flashpoint Financial Services and co-founder of Flashpoint Financial Services, along with Shalana Poole, co-founder and LPL Financial Advisor as well. We're so excited to present to you today. Thank you so much. We're going to be talking about how do I gift my wealth. And so first, a little bit about us. Shalana and I together have a combined experience of 30 years in the financial services world, and we have the hearts of a teacher. So we love to educate, which is why we're helping to present this to the public library. And we appreciate the invitation for this as well. Hope you guys are staying warm. I hear it's raining down close to New Braunfels, but in Canyon Lake, but it's sleeting up here in Austin where we are. So, Shauna, would you like to say a few words before we get started?
Absolutely. My name is Shalana Poole. As Trish stated, we've been in the industry for quite some time, come with a really diverse background, and love the part of educating in our field. Trish will be the main show here. I'll be in the background for today, but we welcome all questions. Jessica, we're thankful for you to hop on today. And I believe what we'll be doing is stopping the recording and asking questions at that point. So feel free to open up a little bit more if you want to, since you're the only participant right now. But for everyone else that happens to watch this recording in the future, we welcome all questions. We will have our contact information at the very end, and Jennifer knows how to get a hold of us as well if you have questions after viewing this particular session. So I think this is really important as far as how to gift your wealth. We work so hard for it, and we want to make sure that it goes to the right individuals in the right way. And Trish is going to do a phenomenal job educating us on how to do that. So without further ado.
Thank you. And Jessica, I see your puppy back there. What a cutie. So today we're going to be talking about how do I gift my wealth. Well, I just want to put it out there right now. Neither Shalana or I are a state attorney or any attorney at all. Neither are we certified public accountants or CPAs. So we just want to make sure that if you have specific questions, those would be best asked to an attorney or a CPA as well. And while we can share our own experiences and what we went through, none of this should be taken as legal advice or tax advice as well. But we do welcome the questions when you have them. If we don't know the answer, we're definitely going to tell you. We're gonna try to find out. So let's jump right in, because we want to know, how do I gift my wealth and or my estate? So looking at that, well, what is my wealth? What is my estate? That could be real property, like a home or a car, personal property, like the things in your home, and then those intangible properties, possibly your IRA, any accounts that you have, savings, different things like that. So we want to make sure that we understand when we do this planning for our goals, our long-term goals, that we are looking at all of these things. So there are types of ownerships when we talk about wealth, and we want to be able to understand those too. So one of the things that Shalana and I are big advocates of is when we know the type of ownership, are we passing it as we want to pass it? And we'll talk about beneficiaries a little bit later in the presentation. But the ownership of assets is important, because how do I own it? Who do I own it with? And who do I want it to pass to? So there are types of ownership, jointly owned, where we have a named beneficiary, and then we have solely owned as well. And for those of us who've been through domestic restructuring, divorce, we want to understand too how some of these assets figure into when we are planning on how to pass and gift our wealth. So the distribution of those assets is part of what we call estate planning. And we can be a big part of that. And although we don't write the wills or the trusts, we can definitely be on that back end where we're helping get it distributed, depending on the type of asset it is. So why What is it? And then why do it? These are important questions. First of all, you want to identify the assets. That's the first thing about getting estate planning started. And if you're a blended family like I am, that was one of the first things when Ray and I, took our relationship serious and we wanted to move to the next level. How do we do that? Because that was important. So estate planning essentials, there are different elements of estate planning, and this is all part of gifting your wealth and how we do that. And sometimes people say, well, I don't have investment accounts. I feel like I don't have any assets, but you do. If you own a home, if you've inherited something, if you have even the smallest token, those are things that we can gift. One of the things that my grandmother was very fond of many years ago, it was a little bit weird though. We'd walk into her home and she'd say, Trish, I want you to tell me what it is in this house that you want so I can put your name on it. And I would say, wait, I just came over for lunch. And she said, but I want to make sure. So she had a long yellow tablet that she would put all of this on. And some people use a little sticker to go on the back of an object. So those were things she wanted to make sure that it got to the people in the family that wanted it. So there are other elements to this too, which is, and forgive me because I do have some allergies, but we want to start too with talking about, a power of attorney, possibly a living will, a will itself, or a trust. And while those things are important, especially powers of attorney, and we're going to talk about those as well, having your plan, whether it's a living will, or a trust, and knowing the difference between those is vital right now. Because if you pass away in the state of Texas, you pass away with no plan. And so at that point, it becomes what the state wants, and then going through a process called probate. It can be very long and expensive, like it was for my family and I when my mom passed away 5 years ago, and we couldn't find her will. We knew what her plans were, but we just didn't have a piece of paper that was legal that said, hey, so I had to go through many steps, and that actually became very expensive. And along with becoming expensive, it was heart-wrenching. Heart-wrenching because, we're trying to do the best we can. And we want to make sure that we're doing it the way my mom wants, which is why having these conversations with your loved one is so important. It can feel a bit morbid, but I assure you, when you have those conversations, even a light conversation, then you kind of get some knowledge. What do my parents want? What do my kids want? If I tell my kids what I want, because my kids and I, they're all adults, we've had those discussions. Hey, here's what I want, but yes, we have wills. Yes, we have powers of attorney. All of these figure in because, and also powers of attorney can be specific. So my husband and I each have a power of attorney for each other in case one of us becomes incapacitated. And again, have these conversations with your attorney because you'll be able to make decisions for someone else if you in fact become their agent on their power of attorney as well. So understanding the difference when you have that conversation with the attorney and then what you'll need. Google's a great way to go to if you just want to do a little light research, but really go to the expert, the attorney. And then some of the other, types of wills that we can talk about. This is important to know. Oh, good question. Just a real quick. Understand that powers of attorney cease to exist upon the person's death. So just because I wrote a power of attorney, if I pass away and then Ray needs to conduct business on my behalf, well, the power of attorney doesn't do any good anymore. They're all designed to do that. So another reason to have some type of plan that follows you into your death so that your survivors and your loved ones will have some peace of mind. It's also a little cheaper to do it on the front end as well. So types of wills, again, your estate attorney can talk about this, but there are simple wills, testamentary trusts, holographic, oral, and joint. And while some people choose to have more than one of these, just be familiar with them. A holographic will is a written will. So if I write a will and then I have somebody witness it, But sometimes we have to be careful on what can be contested. And I don't, again, want to step too much in the legal area of it, but just speaking from my own experience. So, speaking to an attorney, if you have a written will, hey, how is that going to hold up? And at least have them review it if you've taken that step to do that. So different types of estate planning. There are different types of trusts as well. And these trusts, if it applies to you, can be important. So a testamentary trust, a bypass trust, a marital power of appointment, or something called a Q-tip. That's a qualified terminable interest property. So I had to look at my notes for that because, again, I'm not an attorney. And then there's also a living will. And then within those trusts, depending on your situation, there are also different, more specific trusts. Another good example, Lady Bird Johnson had a very specific trust, and so did Jackie Onassis, where there were certain things in those trusts and how they were worded. And some of those trusts are known by those names, like the Jackie Onassis Trust or the Lady Bird Trust. So being familiar with those, if it might apply to you, you can ask your attorney. And so there are 3 parties in a living trust. You keep control, and then you have a trustee that will take care of your business for you. And why this matters when you gift your wealth is you may decide, hey, I might need to use part of my wealth while I'm still living, but I want to know how it's going to pass to my heirs. Oh, and the other thing is, well, what if I don't have any heirs? Can I leave it to a nonprofit organization? Can I do that? Absolutely. There are ways that you can do that. So speak to the attorney on how that would work as well. That's actually become a very popular thing for charitable giving, is to leave a portion of your estate to a charitable organization, maybe one that you highly recommend and that you use or give your time to. There are advantages to trust, and again, speak to your attorney, but they can reduce and eliminate estate taxes. So as we, as advisors, talk to you and help you plan with your investments, your retirement, your long-term care, all of that, these are things too that we're going to take a look at. We may have conversations with your CPA and say, hey, you've got a fairly large estate right now. What do we do with that? You've done such a great job getting, money put away into your 401k or retirement. You've got a large estate, maybe you've inherited it previously as well, or you've built it up. So we want to make sure we can help with that. Another way, when we work with folks directly to avoid probate is, well, we want to name beneficiaries. When you name a beneficiary on, an IRA, on your checking account, on your life insurance, all of that, that assures that beneficiary is going to receive those proceeds and not have to go through the court system through probate. In a trust, all the assets are under one plan, and it can be changed, and it is a quicker distribution of the assets. Now, one thing, just a side note, is that an IRA, if you have an individual retirement plan, those cannot be included in a trust because they are a trust all on their own for the person that has opened that individual retirement account. So lots to think about with this. But I mentioned some things, you can give more of your wealth too when you think about, covering your healthcare costs with a long-term plan or long-term care plan. So if that is something that would work for your family and beneficial, please talk to your financial advisor. Make sure you're asking those questions to cover all the bases so that you know where and how your wealth is going to pass, because you can actually save money by getting your long-term care taken care of, or anything else, and how you want that to pass. So there are some disadvantages to trust as well. All the assets transfer. You have to keep your transactions separate. Sometimes trusts can be expensive, and they have to follow state law. And then there could be some conflicts. So when you do that, if you think that it's important to talk to your family as well, to let them know, hey, this is the route I've decided to go, let them know. There are great estate planning organizers where you can have it all in one thing, or you can even do it online and put it into a virtual vault so that your family, but let your family know, hey, here's where all my important papers are, or here's where my virtual vault is, or here's my attorney, or have something that lists all of those. And I assure you, a little planning goes a long way, because in my case, I was scrambling to figure out, well, who did my mom use as an attorney? Because at that time she'd already had a stroke. And so there were some things memory-wise she wasn't able to focus on, much less her financial part as well. So keep that in mind. There are some key estate planning actions to help you gift your wealth, because you first want to identify, well, what are those assets or investments? What is that property that I want to gift? Determine the distribution, how you want it distributed, the beneficiary designations, and the estate taxes. Now I'm going to back up for just a minute. If I can say one thing right now, put this on your list, other than if you don't have a will and powers of attorneys, talk to someone soon. And also make sure, especially if you've recently gone through a life event, a marriage, a birth, the kids are older, an adoption. Think about all those things. They're all life events. We've hit a certain age. Think about those beneficiary designations. Do a beneficiary review. Make that important. Review your life insurance. Who's my beneficiary? Review your 401k beneficiary. Talk to your bank. Say, hey, I want to add a payable on death to my bank accounts. I want to make it easier for my beneficiaries to walk in here to handle my business. And because those avoid probate at that point. And then, of course, with the estate taxes, because there could be some, and everybody's situation is a little bit different. And yes, you can change your beneficiaries at any point in time. I actually just did that for one of our clients whose mom passed away of COVID a couple months ago. And I kept telling him, we really need to get on this. And I know you're going through a lot. But if you know who it's going to be, have them give me a call, as long as I have your permission to speak to them, and we'll get it updated, because there's a form that's going to be signed or if you can do it online. But yes, you can change your beneficiaries at any time. So great points. Think about that. You may even, want to come up with an outline. Like if you've got a 3-ring binder and you keep all your important papers, come up with an outline like, hey, this life event happened. What do I need to do? And there are tips and tricks to do that too as well online. So some of the other, we talked about this, the estate planning elements, these powers of attorney, these living wills and trust. I want to point out something really important to those of us that are parents. I know that we have a daughter who's 17, will be 18 this year. I know Shalana is going to be thinking about this too, with her oldest daughter turning 18, and then having another one close behind, and then having a bonus daughter who is a little older in college, which is something I learned too when my daughter was attending A&M. She actually had to go to the hospital, and up in College Station, she had something on the back of her leg, but when she went in and I called to see how she was doing, trying to say, well, should I come up there? What should I do? They said, well, we can't talk to you. And I said, but I'm her mom. And they said, she's 18, and due to HIPAA rules, we can't talk to you. So luckily I had a nurse that was a mom, and she heard how panicked I was, and she kind of told me, she goes, no, I think she's okay. She's good. I'll have her call you. It's not necessary for you to drive up here. It's a wound on the back of her leg. We think it was a spider bite. But of course I panicked because I'm a mom. Calm in every other situation until one of your kids is going through something, and then we're like, what up? But so make sure that when your children turn 18, talk about having some type of power of attorney or medical power of attorney, so that you can make those decisions on their behalf, because you're their parents, so you're going to kind of know, like, hey, this is what I think should happen. Now, when they get married, it's a little bit different story, or they're in a serious relationship, but do remember that, especially as we're sending them off to college, or if we're sending them off to war, like I had to do with her sister. And then if I needed to handle her sister's affairs while she was gone, I could do that on her behalf as well. So yes, so thank you. I'm reading some of the comments to make sure I'm keeping up. But there is power in having a power of attorney, but also peace of mind. So we covered a lot about gifting your wealth, but also thinking about that path, to get there, because we've got things that we have to do now. So with that said, this was prepared by LPL Financial. This is the contact information for Shalana and I'm sure that the public library has that as well. But we'd like to welcome your questions and comments. And before I do that, may I just say that you'll see Shalana's name is followed by some letters. One of those designations is super important. They're both super important, but one is super important because if you are going through a domestic restructuring, a divorce, this is something that she specializes in, and having those conversations from a financial standpoint. So working with you and your attorney to help plan for that, knowing what your next step should be, having that goal, that plan, so that you can be thinking about that. This is something that Shalana also does specialize in as well. So Jennifer, thank you so much. Shalana, would you like to add anything before we have some questions?
Oh, no, I think you did a great job. I mean, from the top level view, the best way to gift or send off your wealth that you've accumulated over time is one, understanding what you have. I thought that very first slide was really important, where you have to identify what you own and how it's titled is extremely important in a step of trying to figure out how do you gift it appropriately. And then the beneficiaries is important as well, and how to do that. The most cost efficient way is important. And of course, you can gift your wealth while you're living. There's certain rules in place that you have to follow as far as how much you can gift each year without being taxed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall if we talked about that a little bit, but it's really important. That number changes from time to time each year.
Nice.
And it's a way to give in a tax efficient way, if you will. But there are ways to give while you're living as well as while you're after you've passed on. And the trust is important. The important legal documents are really in place. To me, it just really sounds like we need to get your ducks in a row now, so that when we are gifting and we are spreading the love of what you've accumulated over time, it's done the best way possible. And it all starts with who are you and what do you have? So I really like that point from above, Trish. Great job.
Absolutely. And thanks for the reminder, because you can gift up to a certain amount to family members, qualifying family members every year. And so that's another way. If you've got a high net worth estate and you want to try to what we call spend it down, gifting every year so that you gift it now. It doesn't mean that the heirs have to use it now. You may do it with the stipulation to say, hey, this is for the future, or hey, I'm gifting it to the child's college savings account. We did have a client, he actually has a sizable estate with a ranch, and he said, I just don't know what I'm going to do with all this. And I said, you know what, it's time to take your family on that dream vacation every year, because you can afford it. And when you do that, you're effectively going to save them on some inheritance taxes as well, by kind of lowering your taxes, because you're spending that money. And so isn't that nice to be able to have a little bit more money to spend, so that your kids don't inherit too much, and then they themselves have a tax burden too. So yes, absolutely.